Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin.
Welcome into Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin here on the Catholic Family Podcast.
These two will debate real-life issues from a Catholic perspective every Monday at 9 Eastern. Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment with no punches held and no falsehood left standing. Sit back, relax, grab your cup of coffee, and enjoy the show. Here are your hosts, Matt and Kevin.
Good morning, one and all. Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin. It's been a while. It's awesome to be back, Matt. It's nice to see your lovely face. And I know we've had a lot of people. I've had quite a few comments, Matt, saying how much they missed us. That feels pretty good. I don't know if you've seen that, but people actually really enjoy our show, which is surprising.
Yeah, I know. Considering when it's all said and done. But yeah, I've heard the same thing. I've heard people actually come up to me. Actually, I had maybe he's listening. I heard somebody come up to me last week at Mass saying, "Oh, I recognize you from the podcast with your show."
Nice.
So, and now I'm blanking on his name. So you know who you are, but I apologize.
So Matt, as anyone was wondering, Matt is a jerk who doesn't remember names. But actually, ironically, I'm also a jerk. I met a guy in Italy, in Rimini. So it's this little coastal town in Italy. And I went to Mass there with the IMBC. Very nice little parish. Nice experience. Got to meet the priest there as well, who didn't speak any English. But this guy comes up to me and he's like, in this tiny Italian parish. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I really like your podcast." It's like, what the heck? From Rimini. That was awesome. And so he actually helped translate between me and the priest. Very cool. And unfortunately, I also forgot his name. So my friend in Italian, in Italy, I apologize for that. We're both Matt and we're kind of jerks. So apologies to the names we forgot.
You can tell me your name and within 2 seconds I'll be like, what was it again? Like, for some reason it just doesn't store. I don't know. I can't keep it. But then there are some who I'll never forget. I'll hear it once and I'm like, I will never ever forget your name. I don't know.
Yeah, my brain's moving forward too quickly. I think, but that's a whole nother topic. But that's an interesting issue with our modern age. I think you hear a lot of people say that, hey, I don't remember your name, and I think it is because we as a people generally don't savor anything. We are always on to the next, and I can tell you that I'm terrible about that. It's always, okay, I see your face, I heard your name, and now what are you going to tell me? Rather than soaking it in, right? Actually letting the information soak into your head, because I think we're so obsessed, or so our brains are so connected with the technology that our brain, we're not used to actually letting something soak in. We're just kind of, okay, next.
It's like cell phone numbers though, too, Kev. Like, our kind of generation and back, we would remember people's phone numbers.
Yes.
Right? You would remember. I remember. Now, if you ask younger people here, what's your mom's phone number? They have no idea. It's all just stored in their phones. We had that kind of thing. Very different. The world shifted.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I think that is something that's worth kind of rethinking. Kind of thinking about how we think, because again, the names, I think that's such an interesting issue, and I'm terrible about it. But
well, your name is on the screen, so I won't.
My name is on the screen.
I have to glance at it every now and then.
Right, exactly. Kev, it begins with a K. It begins with a K. No, it's funny. I think I've mentioned this before in podcasts that my name is strangely hard for Germans to say. Davis. It's really funny. It's like,
really?
Davis is like, in the US it's like one of the most common names in the country, but in Germany it's like Dafis,
Doofus.
Kevin Dafis is like, no, it's just Davis. Davis.
Stop trying so hard.
Come on, guys, this is not that hard. But anyway, so Matt and I, after rambling for the first 3.5 minutes, part of what we want to talk, we had quite a few topics we wanted to kind of broach today, but I think the big one, Matt, that we wanted to talk about is the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing. And I think that no one wants us to talk too much about the whole transgender garbage, because it's just disgusting. And I think that the good thing is the people listening to this podcast don't need a brush up on the morality or immorality of it all. But I think that to me, what's really interesting is looking at why these companies are promoting them or supporting these perverts, and then totally tanking. Bud Light's the perfect example that we're going to look into a little bit. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, man. Bud Light goes out and puts a commercial with this guy pretending to be a woman. I mean, not well. He doesn't pretend well to be a woman. He totally makes fun of womanhood and makes fun of anything feminine. And they put him on a commercial, and of course, within I think 2 weeks now, Bud Light is at least reporting to have lost $6 billion with a B dollars.
Yes.
So Matt, my question for you: why? What goes through the marketing department's heads at Bud Light that says, or Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch is the actual company? What's their reasoning behind this?
I think there's a total disconnect between how popular this stuff really is. I brought this up to someone on Twitter the other day, and the mainstream media wants to create their own narrative, right? And you see this in so many different ways. You see it in news stories, you see it in, I don't know, presidential elections. It's almost like they force feed a lot of things on us. And I remember asking someone on Twitter just this past week, how many people do you actually know, like in real life, right? Whether it be university or school or work or wherever you might be, really truly believe that there are more than two genders? Like, how many people do you really know believe that? And nobody really does. If you just kind of walk around, kind of bring this sort of up in whatever sort of way you want to, people don't believe it. And yet, if you listen to the mainstream media, they would have you believe that everybody believes this, that the common opinion of the day is that gender is fluid, that there's multiple genders and so on. So I think there's a really big disconnect between what the elite want to push on our country as a whole and what the people themselves actually believe. And I think, when June is the Pride Month, right, where everybody turns rainbow, you see how every single company, whether it's Target, Dunkin' Donuts, Apple, I mean, you name it, they all turn the rainbow colored flags. But when you really get to the heart of America, or you really start to talk to actual people on the ground, the opinions don't match. And I think this is kind of the backlash we're seeing from Anheuser-Busch with their Bud Light thing, is they're finding, they think in their elitist bubble where, these people sit in their high office ivory towers making billions and billions of dollars, that they're listening to what the media is pushing, and it's this new wokeness, whatever, where suddenly, appealing to demographics is more important than the actual product. And all of a sudden they find, like, well, hey, we're being told that this is the new opinion, this is the common stance, this is the common, belief among the American people. But they find when they put it into practice that it's really not as popular as they thought. Take gay marriage, for example, too. I know it's some reason or another tends to kind of focus on this point, but how many times do people try to tell you that, well, gay marriage, but when it was put to vote, a lot of times it was rejected a lot. There's a huge disconnect, I believe, between what the elites are pushing and what the American public actually believes. I think America, and I've, kind of to stay away out of politics, but I think America is a lot more conservative than people kind of realize. I think that America, I hate using those terms, but I think that there's really, these common opinions are really not that unpopular. Say that unborn life begins at conception, that marriage is between a man and a woman. I refuse to accept these are not so-called popular beliefs. And I think, these powers that be, they really try to shift the talking points, really try to push the narrative, and they find out that it really doesn't always succeed, especially when their base might be geared towards a specific demographic. One more quick point that I thought of, it's like when Beto O'Rourke said that he was going to come and take all of your guns, and he said that to Texans. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Know your base, bro. Know your
base.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, they're stuck in their own elitist bubble, I think, and they don't get how popular a lot of this stuff is, really, among everyday people.
Well, and I think it's just incredible, because I think you're right. I think they're just that dumb. I mean, because again, these ideologies and everything, a lot of this has just been brainwashed into society, and that's a tragedy, and it's horrible, and it shows you the issues with our media, with our education, etc. But I mean, look at these companies. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, billions. And this is a company that obviously has some of the best in the world at sitting down and saying, how can we make more money? That's it. Right. That's all they do. They don't sit there and say, but they shouldn't, at least. They normally, I should say, they don't sit there and think, what's the best way to look like we're supporting something ideological? They just say, hey, how do we make more money? And so how on earth do they come away from,
Right.
what's going on right now and say, yep, this is the popular thing? And obviously, as you say, they obviously do, because these are the things that continue to happen. It's happened with Disney as well. Disney,
Yeah.
many in Hollywood in general, they make these movies that are just woke garbage, and they tank.
They read the pulse wrong. For sure. They totally read the pulse wrong. And I was reading the Anheuser-Busch CEO, or whatever he is. He made an official statement here. And I think that I do believe that a lot of people are content with it, I should say, that they're okay as long as, live and let live. I think that's a very common philosophy here in America, but they're realizing that these people kind of went from live and let live to you must believe this, right? I don't think that there might be, so much of Americans that are opposed to all these things as much as they just don't want to see it in their own homes, or they just don't want to force it down their throats. And I think this is really, there's that shift, because you probably remember as well as I do, the real, what would you call it? The slippery slope of gay marriage, right? It really started, they didn't even want marriage. They wanted a civil union simply recognized so they can do their hospital visits or whatever they tell us.
Matt, and Obama was against
they all were.
marriage.
So was Hillary.
Obama, come on.
Right.
I mean, this was not that long ago. One of the most liberal presidents of all time was
when Hillary, it's on video, when Hillary was running for the U.S. Senate, she said on whatever news network it was that marriage is between a man and a woman. And as New York senator, she will fight for the rights of DOMA was the Defense of Marriage Act at the time. She will fight to work for DOMA. The marriage is between a man and a woman. These people are cowering out of fear, I think, because we really don't like to push back, right? You're going to be labeled all these sorts of names. You're going to be labeled intolerant, hateful. You name the litany of insults. Our Lord warned us of that. Remember, he said, I don't know which account of the gospel it's in, but he said, people are going to laugh at you, mock you, say you are hateful on account of my name. Rejoice when that day comes and dance for joy. Well, we better start dancing, because we are just letting them walk over us and all of these things. So I'm glad that there is this pushback over this. I'm glad that people are actually deciding to pull money out, because we have been far too complacent for so many years now, where we have we gave them an inch and they took 20 feet. And we haven't done anything about it. And I think, there's that, how do you reconcile, I want to be charitable, I want to be, humble, but also not willing to compromise. And I think if you look at throughout the course of history, people were willing to fight for their beliefs. Look at the Crusades, look at, what happened in Mexico with the Aztecs and all of that. People were willing to fight and to stand up for what they believed in, not this fear of, I might get canceled. Very real in this day.
Well, but, and not even just that. I'm going to take it even a step farther, because it's not even just about getting canceled. I think we are even more pathetic. And I mean, this is going to sound harsh, but it's true. We are so pathetic that we won't put our money where our mouth is, not just because we're afraid of losing our jobs or losing our livelihoods or losing our freedoms, simply because we're afraid of losing our convenience. We're afraid to boycott. We're afraid to stand up for something that is right or against something that is wrong, simply because we are lazy, globalistic consumerists who have to have everything we want now. And it's just true. Anyone sitting there listening, think about it right now. I mean, and I've talked about this so many times on different shows, and I've gotten, some people agree, a lot of people don't. The whole idea of globalism and consumerism, why do we buy what we buy? And the fact that anyone, and I mean anyone, still has Netflix or Amazon or Disney or drinks Bud Light, or I mean, as you said, they all do this rainbow flag thing. Now, I understand this is going to be really hard to boycott all of them, but you know what? Okay, maybe we need a hard life. Maybe virtue comes through struggle. Virtue in a happier life, in a more satisfied life, comes through struggle. Now, am I ready to just start doing that? I'm not sure either. Now, I'm also a lazy, pathetic consumerist. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not. I'm not saying I'm not. But I mean, but I think that kind of stuff is worth looking into. It's really worth sitting down and thinking about, because we've fallen so far down that trap of globalism and consumerism. And, well, where else would I go? What else would I buy? What other movies would I watch? What other beer would I drink? And it's like, well, I mean, do we have no options? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, actually, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but there was a recent article that I saw come out that Generation Z, so I believe that is born in 2012-ish and Post, I think, or something like that. They're returning to the old flip phones, and that's becoming popular with that demographic because they don't like, having all of this on their smartphone.
Well,
And it's weird because you think about that, and they're young still, right? So they're not really self-sufficient. They're kind of, I think they're using it to, like, say, when they're like, when I go out with my friends, I don't want to, maybe also browse Instagram. I just want to be in the moment, whatever. Okay. But I think that they might realize, as they get older and they need to start scheduling maybe appointments, or they need to schedule flights, or they need to, catch a train, or whatever they might have to do. Our world operates with these things, and that's what makes it so hard, is like you say, okay, I'm going to get rid of it. All right, cool. But then you realize you can't function in a lot of different ways. There's this trickle down effect, and one example that I have of it really quickly was cash. I don't know about you, but I really don't carry cash on me at all. I use my phone for a lot of. I use Apple Pay to go through a lot of things, and so I'll say to myself, okay, I'm just gonna leave my phone at home. I'm gonna go out, pretend like it's 1999. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go grab a cup of coffee or whatever at Dunkin' Donuts, roll down the windows and enjoy like I'm living in the dark ages. And then I get to the Dunkin' Donuts window and I'm like, oh, I don't have my phone on me to pay. I can't pay, So we're so sucked in to everything being, tied in to what modern life is, that, like you said, how much are we really willing to give up out of all these things?
But I think that's the question, and that's what everyone has to decide on their own. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you what all you should boycott. But I mean, people boycotting Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch is a good thing. That is absolutely, that is a good thing that people stood up. And people. I mean, look at Kid Rock. Kid Rock, actually pretty funny video. I don't know if you saw that. Shot up, got out like an M16 or something and shot up a bunch of Budweiser, Bud Light cans, and said pretty much, I'm no longer going to buy your beer. And he's a big, Bud Light guy, whatever. And I mean, again, it's not like he's a moral guy who I would support, but you see though that if a guy like him can say, hey, this is too much for me, I'm going to go drink another beer that doesn't push this garbage down my throat, then why are we waiting this far to make a stand? I mean, and again, everyone has their own different line. I chose, Amazon is just a good example of where I chose, hey, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm not saying everyone's going to do that, obviously, but I think it's a healthy thing. I really think that people should really consider it. Just saying, hey, this company, I can't stand it. I go and I see the rainbow when I'm shopping. So you know what? I'm going to find an alternative means. And I can tell you, if you boycott, let's just say, for example, Walmart. I know that's hard. I used to live in America too. I shopped at Walmart for everything. So, but I guarantee you, if you do it, there are benefits. There are benefits of localism, the fight against globalism. And you're going to find better products. You're going to help your community. There's so much good that happens. And what you lose is it's going to be a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier. Give that up for what I actually firmly believe is a greater good, not just morally, but also societally and economically.
I have a good point with that. There some time ago, I thought like you, I don't want to go to these places anymore. You walk in, there's the rainbow like falling on you as you're entering the front door. And I said, I'm going to do something different. And there's this company, I'll mention their name. They're called AllAmerican Gene, and they're made in the USA, kind of a local shop. Like they're their own local business, but they ship across the US. And just what you said, it's a bit more expensive. And I remember sitting there thinking like, a t-shirt here is like $35-ish. Like I can get this at $10 at Walmart or whatever. But I said, I'm going to do it. But just to the point you made, the quality was exceptional. It was made here in America, supporting American businesses, a local business, really. Super, one of my favorite pairs of clothes that I own. So, I mean, you do kind of in some ways get what you pay for, and there's always that disconnect too. People say like, well, I don't like the working conditions of Foxconn, the factory in China where people make iPhones, but then they go buy an iPhone. Stick locally, and it does help, and you do get what you pay for. I have jeans, I have shirts, and I might have a coat from them too. pricey a little bit, but man, like this stuff lasts. It's worth it.
Well, and that's a
It's worth
great
it.
point, Matt, because I mean that's something that I found in Germany that's even a really American issue that you and again, having been there, you buy cheap stuff because it's cheap, and then you have to buy more cheap stuff because
within a week.
because it dies, or it
yeah.
rips, or it breaks, or it's garbage. It's just pure garbage because it's all from China. And here in Germany, it's so true. Or in Ireland, I mean, we get a lot of our winter stuff from Ireland, and then it's hand, made, cotton, not cotton, but wool. It's handmade wool sweaters, and I wear it all winter long, and it's comfortable. It's insanely warm. It's durable, and it just lasts. And I've had it for like 4 years now. I wear it every day, and it was, I don't know, it was probably $80 or something, but I haven't had to buy another sweater.
Right.
I mean, it's just like, I mean,
Right.
it really makes a difference. I think it's an entire mindset of, okay, just buy quality rather than quantity, and it ends up being the same in the long run.
It works. Yeah, no, it works. And maybe another point that I kind of thought of too, as we were talking, they had a poll, and I'm just kind of very vague here because I don't remember it, but I came across it recently, and they polled both sides, if you want to call them sides, conservative and liberal, if you want to even use those terms, which I don't really like, but whatever. And they asked each group, how comfortable are you sharing your views on social media without the fear of getting canceled? Like that was the approximate wording on that. And the liberal side, those who associated with the left, air quotes, so they were fairly comfortable, sharing their views without having the fear of getting canceled by their employer. The conservative side, and if I can find it, maybe I'll put it in the comments in the YouTube channel, but they were very low. They said they're not comfortable sharing their views publicly out of fear of getting canceled by their employer. Very low. So again, it just goes to show you how, when you think of employer, you think of, maybe a big corporation, to go again, these elites, these higher ups that seem to have this real disconnect with people. And it made me think too, Liz Cheney, when she was running for re-election in Wyoming, was it? CNN went on the ground in Wyoming, and they really went into rural Wyoming, where these people, they don't, they live very simple, basic lives with their their little farms, their livestock, their fairs, whatever. And CNN was just shocked that like people thought of this way about the government. They were very opposed to the progressivism, the liberalism, and the disconnect is huge. And I don't know, I hope now that we're making some of these statements, like with Anheuser-Busch and their Budweiser beer, that maybe we start to get put on the map a little bit.
Well, and I think this is something I really noticed. Switching topics a little bit, I saw the other day, and I wish I had saved. It was somewhere on Twitter. I wish I had saved who published it, but it was a blue check mark, pretty normal, something like the Daily Caller. It wasn't Daily. Yeah, that's true. It wasn't the Daily. I know, I'm with you. It wasn't the Daily Wire, but it was like the Daily Caller. Some pretty typical, leftish, left center or whatever. And I should have saved it, so I don't have the stats. Sorry, everybody. But it was something like 20 years ago, the amount of people who identified, quote unquote, as LGBTQ was 5%, something like that. And now it's 20%.
Oh, yes.
They said it's 20%. That is absolute total garbage. There is no way, Matt, right. I mean, come on. There is no way. No. Do you realize how many? 20%? 20%. Are you serious right now? You're saying millions and millions and millions of people are LGBT crap? No possible way. And this is how they shift, this is how they shift knowledge. They just say things that aren't true. And they've been doing this for 100 years. Look at our history books. Look at how they teach science these days. Look at all these different things that are just made up. They just make stuff up, and you know what? Nobody calls them out on it. So we did a poll, and the poll says 20%,
we did a study,
20%. A study says that 20% of Americans are now gay. No, no chance.
Yeah, and I think especially with younger people too, there is this phenomenon, right? They're without it. I will certainly attest to that. There is this phenomenon among younger people that all of a sudden things are a little weird.
Oh, it's gotten worse.
But totally worse. It's totally gotten worse. But are they really this? Absolutely not. Yeah. They are being fed in so bad to this cesspool that they don't really know what to do. And again, I think as well as a part of a lack of a life of grace. right? If you live in a life of grace, you're going to live within accordance of divine law. That's just how it works, right? But the sooner you remove these things, the sooner you remove sacraments and truth or whatever, you live in this chaotic sphere, which is Satanism, really, right? There's no natural order, there's no natural law, there's no divine law, there's no rule of life that comes from God himself.
Well, as Aleister Crowley said, do as thou wilt.
Yes.
Creepy.
Right. Yeah. Very. Yeah. Yes. It's what Satan said to Eve. Yeah. And they're really being misled by that. And it made me think, speaking of the devil, let me read, if I can kind of jump to this quick. Our favorite Pope, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, has said recently, he has said, he was talking about that when he was, he loves to give these airplane interviews. He was kind of saying that when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, that he was very frequently would call in exorcists. And a point to make here before I even read this was one of his most favorite exorcists, I believe, was a Lutheran. So how that works, I don't know. But all of a sudden, this hammer of heretics believes that he's under demonic attack. And I wanted to read this this quote to our audience here from Francis, and he said, quote, "It is possible," something I can't get through this without a little smile here. "It is possible that I get on the devil's nerves often because I try to follow the Lord and do what the gospel says, and that annoys the devil. And at the same time, he is certainly happy when I commit some sin. He seeks man's failure, but he has no chance if there is prayer. Yes, it is true. Saint Paul VI," he's talking about, obviously, our most famous Vatican II Pope, said that the devil can also enter the temple of God to sow discord and turn one against another. Divisions and attacks are always the work of the devil. He always tries to institute them himself to corrupt the heart and the mind of man. The only salvation is to follow the path indicated by Christ." So that's the end of the quote there. So in his wisdom here, he's telling us division is always the work of the devil. And it makes me think, right, how is that true at all? Christ himself said, "I came to bring the sword." Christ is the divider, right? I mean, he is the absolute truth, the discord between good and evil. Division in a lot of ways is of God. I mean, this is totally inverse here. And then, he's very good, as we've talked about before, curtailing his messages to his audience. The only salvation is to follow the path indicated by Christ. He would never tell that to his friend, Buddha or whatever. But he thinks that he's under the attack demonically by Satan. And I've always wondered, and I never really brought this up, but do you think, Benedict XVI was very intelligent. Do you think that men like him realized that there's this disconnect here between pre and post conciliar theology? Do you think they realized that, maybe these ordinations are not valid? Do you think they convinced themselves? Or I've thought of it. Any
I think
thoughts?
Bergoglio. I think they're, Ratzinger and Bergoglio, I think, are very different. But I think Bergoglio fully signs on. And there was a great segment in our live podcast that Louis Verrecchio did that unfortunately didn't make it, but it's on the channel. It's really good. And he talked about how, if you look at it, Bergoglio has the most, he is the most honest and well-meaning of all the post-Vatican II popes, supposed popes, because he most adheres to what Vatican II actually taught. And that's a really interesting thing that I think Bergoglio fully accepts what Vatican II is and what it created, and that is a brand new religion, and that is a religion that fully supports, ecumenism and the idea that religious indifferentism, that it's all good, you can do whatever you want, it's fine, Catholics are fine, but Jews and Muslims are in the same, it's all the same boat. And I think that he actually fully accepts that. Now, Ratzinger or the other ones before him, it's harder to say, because I think they clearly knew that they had founded something else, something new, But I think, especially like Ratzinger, I think you saw, even in his later, especially in his later years, I think you saw that he almost regretted it. I think, and he wouldn't say that. I think his quotes showed otherwise. But I think the way he acted, I get the feeling that I think there was at least a piece of him that knew that he was born into the real church, and that he formed a new church. Now, that's purely my opinion, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, because again, these are very intelligent men, and obviously intelligence doesn't mean much. You can be the smartest man in the world, and St. Paul says, without God, they're made fools. So, it doesn't say much, but yeah, I think men like him, as you said, they were born into this old church, right? They were born into this. And I think to some extent, yeah, I think you're right. I think that there are elements that he understood, and I think that there are things that he kind of realized, or like there is this disconnect here. Because he would say things like, the church doesn't have a mission to convert the Jews. There's no way, in my opinion anyway, that somebody like him truly believed it. That's kind of hard to kind of piece together, but it goes kind of in line with being woke, right? I think these Vatican II, especially Francis, they're very woke, right? They'll talk about the cry of the earth. Francis has tweeted this cry of the earth several times. He's tweeted he wrote in one of his encyclicals, we have to be in communion with the forest. They are more concerned about these social issues on the progressive side of things than they are with preaching actual church doctrine. Is he afraid of popularity? I don't really know, but it is a kind of a wokenism, especially in the canonization of their new saints.
Yeah, that's so true. But I think Bergoglio is different. I think he's a whole new
breed.
He is actually a fruit of Vatican II, while the other anti-popes were part of it. They helped to build Vatican II. They were in it. They were still kind of a bridge from the old church into the new, in a way, if you know what I mean.
John Paul obviously II, I think, was really, yes.
John Paul II, but I think Ratzinger, I think even Paul VI to an extent. I mean, he was maybe a bit more extreme, but I think that they had a better understanding of what the actual true Catholic Church was, and so they for whatever reason, I don't know. I can't judge why they did it. Nobody can. We can say what they did and that it was wrong and it's a new church. But I think that I don't know. I just think that they were an older breed. They had a better idea of what it was, and maybe they didn't like it, or maybe they thought the Catholic Church is too harsh, or the Jews are, the Catholic Church is anti-Semitic, and I think some of them just did. I think whatever reason, they actually believe that stuff. Now, Bergoglio, I think he's just a pagan. I think he's just straight up pagan, ecumenical, or false ecumenism, just purely, as you say, woke, totally. And I think he is a new breed, and I think. True. After him, that's all you're going to see. I think it's going to be so extreme. I think they're going to found a new religion. That's.
I'm just going to ask you this. Goes. He's had some health scares recently, right? I think there's a report that he recently, in his latest hospitalization, that he actually was unconscious at some points. He's had a few close calls, so it brings to mind the conclave, right? And there are different opinions on this. Where do you think it's going to go? As there is every conclave. But you kind of shared your thoughts there. Do you think that they would put somebody forth, like maybe a Sarah or a Burke, who kind of is more, a little bit to the right of things? Or do you think they're going to go full Roche here, saying that the Latin Mass is I don't know, everything wrong with the church? You kind of lean towards they would go more Roche than a Sarah.
I hope so. If they continue, I mean, look at, I think what 2/3 of the cardinals are appointed by the supposed cardinals are appointed by Bergoglio. So you have to imagine they have this, they have the spirit of Bergoglioism, not the spirit of Benedict XVI, which I think means it's how on earth are you going to elect a quote unquote conservative pope? I just don't see it. So I think it's gonna be Taglia or Gregory or Roche or someone of these guys he's gonna be Francis II. And I
might even choose that name. Wouldn't shock me.
Totally. Or John Paul III. I mean, something like that. I mean, I could totally say it. And I think John Paul III. Totally. I mean, I think it could definitely happen. And I think that if they do, I really see. I hope my real hope, as I said, is that they say we are no longer the Catholic Church. We are the Church of the world. And I mean, Bergoglio does everything but say it. I mean, he practically says it. He just doesn't officially do it. But if one of these guys comes out and officially says, you know what, we no longer even take the name of Catholic. We are just the Church of the world, the universal church, whatever they want to call it. I think they could. I really think they could happen, because I think that's the only way, as you and I both know, I don't know any other way that the SSPX and the FSSP and all these other ilk are officially going to say, okay, that's it. Because as we've seen, Rome can do anything and there'll just be an excuse made from it. And I think that's the one way. If they officially say we are no longer the Catholic Church, I think that's one.
Yeah, I do kind of lean towards that myself, especially because I think, they realized that implementing their own new religion here was not always well received with some groups, and I think that's where Benedict's Summum Pontificum came in, right? They tried to kind of pull in the Lefebvrists a little bit. It didn't really work. So now I think they're full blown, which I think Francis and is realizing, like, okay, we tried to cater to you. Benedict did try. He reached out. He kind of levied the restrictions of the mass, of the Latin mass, but it didn't really accomplish what they wanted to. It didn't really bring in anybody. It kind of, if anything, left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. So I think they're kind of like, okay, this is it. And Francis, it's funny because your inclination here and mine as well is that he's really just, some goofy guy who's really just spitting out, nonsense. But I think he's actually very clever. And I think he's actually very well aware of what he's doing. And he's a very good politician. And he sees that he's now cornering them here. Either, they have to accept his authority or, choose whether they want the mass or the Pope. That's kind of the corner he pushed them in. I think he's playing it very well. And with that is all from us for today, Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin here on the Catholic Family Podcast. Have a blessed week, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Tune in every Monday at 9 Eastern for a brand new episode.
Make the world Catholic again.